In 1907, Philip Hayden invited 30 of his fellow music supervisors to join him in Keokuk, Iowa for a 3-day conference. Their goal was to unify and strengthen the fledgling music education programs around the nation. The outcome of that meeting was the Music Supervisors National Conference, MSNC, predecessor to our current National Association for Music Education. In the 1920s, MSNC grew and expanded. The first Northwest Division Conference was held in Spokane in 1923, with the All-Northwest Band, Orchestra, and Choir making their debuts. At the 1937 Northwest Conference held in Eugene, Oregon, several Washington music teachers met to discuss needs unique to Washington, and the Washington Music Educators Association was born. In 1948, WMEA was incorporated and the first state conference was held in Tacoma. More than 500 students gathered to form the first WMEA All-State Honor Groups at WMEA's 1954 Yakima Conference. The students each paid $9 to participate. They were housed in private homes, with hosts providing meals and transportation to and from rehearsals. At the 1956 Spokane Conference, participation in the 3 high school all-state groups was increased to 900 students. That number has remained relatively consistent for the past 56 years. The 50s and 60s were a vibrant time for music education nationally and in our state. After World War II, many veterans used the GI Bill to obtain a college education, including a significant number of well-trained musicians who became music educators. WMEA was divided into 6 districts, later relabeled regions. They provided the structure to handle festivals and contests. WMEA continued to grow. Session offerings at the conference expanded to include all levels and areas of music instruction. During this era, the conference rotated between cities that were interested in hosting it. Hotels were only used to house the teachers who attended the event. Because the meeting space was in schools, the business of organizing a conference was simple compared to today. It was not unusual for the board to decide on a conference location at its fall meeting the same school year as the conference. In 1968, MENC selected the Seattle Center as the site for its national conference. As was customary, whenever a national conference was held, the state conference was blended into it. The first big change to student honor groups came in 1976 and 1978, with the piloting of the All-State Jazz Band and Choir. They were discontinued following the pilot, but were reworked and reinstated later. President Bernie Ackerman's 1978 conference returned to Yakima for the 6th time out of 16 conferences.
Except there's one thing I hear, and it brings up the old adage that I learned years ago, that in education everything's just a big circle, keeps going around and around. Same old stuff year after year, new faces, new names. You know, we were talking about that earlier because out in the hallway, because one of the things I remember during my presidency was that we were in a period of time of riffing, reduction in force, and districts were laying teachers off, programs were being cut, music programs, of course, right there in the forefront, we got to cut this. So we developed what was called a crisis kit. And we put together a bunch of material and a tape and packaged it into a mailable package and mailed those out to people that were having problems retaining their job or in fear of possibly losing the job or just plain trying to promote their program in the district, which now they use the word advocacy.
During the early 1980s, the seeds were planted to examine the Constitution and bylaws and update them to reflect current WMEA practices. The configuration of the WMEA board was also studied to ensure that it was representing the membership. The task was completed by the 1984 conference in Renton under the presidency of Neil Porter.
We need to work with school districts strongly to keep making sure that music gets their fair share of whatever funds are available. And I think we have to realize that school districts are making a lot of cuts, a lot of proposals, but they're really in a bind because of the lack of the state funding. It's not their fault. We can't blame school boards and administrators for wanting to cut programs. They don't want to do it, but they're forced to. But the problem I see is that a lot of times they don't really understand some of the cuts they propose, what effects it has on the program, and particularly on the kids. So I think we need to be much more aggressive in working with school districts to say, hey, you make this particular cut, you realize it means this, that kind of stuff. And if cuts have to be made, and they probably do, can we help them work on, determine what the cuts are so they have the least negative effect on kids and programs?
The newly changed and expanded board began operating during the presidency of Peggy BURROUGH. Curriculum officers had been added to help plan the conference sessions and to write curricular-specific columns for Voice. Although bad weather kept some teachers from attending the 1986 conference in Wenatchee, nearly all honor group students arrived and presented outstanding concerts.
And one of the biggest things that happened, changes that came about during my term, was the state supervisor of visual, fine, and performing arts. And that was Gina May, and many things happened during my term, and the arts organizations were brought together: drama, theater, dance, art, and we held our very first arts leadership conference. So that was really an important part of my 2 years as WMEA president. In fact, during the convention that year, we had an arts day, arts education day, and all of the arts organizations came to our music convention and did sessions. And so it was a wonderful sharing experience. So of all the things that happened during my 2 years, I would say that was probably the biggest. Also, we had many task force. We had a governmental relations task force, and we had All-State and Jazz. And on the All-State, one of the concerns that we had was the small schools in our state were kind of plagued by not having representation in our state convention, All-State groups. And so we came up with a policy whereby in the small schools, those that had sent in an audition tape, if they were in band, choir, or orchestra, that there would be at least one representative from all the small schools in the state. So, which made it a little difficult in selecting, because we had to get all the three chairmen together, the band, choir, and orchestra, and then they had to decide, which from this particular school would be representing them. But that was wonderful to have that happen.
Ken Noreen took a bold step for the 1988 conference by holding it at the Tacoma Sheraton Hotel. By utilizing not only the Sheraton, but also the Pantages and Rialto theaters for concert hours, the conference drew record numbers of teachers who appreciated the opportunity to meet outside the school setting.
Well, I just remember that my mentor, who was Bruce and Joe's mentor too, Bill Cole, said to me, Ken, you have to pay your professional dues. You have to become involved as a leader, and just to serve that capacity. He said, you owe that to your profession. And I do that with the umpteen number of high school and middle school and elementary band directors that I have had as students who are now out there. I tell them the same thing. They owe it to the profession to be involved, to be the organizing chairman for their local festival, or being involved with helping organize all-state groups or whatever it is. We need to grow professionally. In our school district, in the Shoreline District, it was so great because one of the things you had to do for an advancement is to show professional growth.
In 1989, WMEA participated in the first Arts Time. Held at the University of Washington, Arts Time brought together arts educators and advocates from around the state. In addition to sponsoring several sessions, WMEA presented all state band, orchestra, and choir as the conference's culminating event. Although the 1988 Tacoma Conference had been a hit, the financial results were not known in time to plan for the 1990 conference, especially if a commercial site were to be used. As a result, the board took a conservative approach and returned to a school setting in Olympia. Even though the conference was very successful, the message from the WMEA membership was clear. They loved having the conference in a hotel. President Mel Clayton elected to return to the Tacoma Sheraton in 1992. Some all-state honor groups were moved to surrounding suburban districts to ease the hosting pressure on Tacoma music educators.
What's really rewarding to me more than anything else is now looking at the WMEA board and the function of the organization and how many things are running and how well it's being run. And with the executive director, that whole thing's new. And by the way, I was totally against that when I was back in whatever that was, 90s. I was totally against it. And now, I stand corrected. I was proven that it's evolved into a very positive thing. And I'm really proud of all these people now that are doing what they're doing, which I was part of way back, a long time ago. People talk about the good old days. There weren't any. It was never easy. It was a lot of the same exact problems you have now. They just have different masks on, different costumes. And the education world puts different words on the same things. They describe them in different ways. We had budget problems. We had scheduling problems. We had all these things. We could have sworn we were fighting for the survival of music education, And so there were no good old days. And as I tell my students that I teach at college, this is the good old days for you guys, because when you're my age, you're going to talk about the good old days when you were this age.
President Bruce Caldwell moved the 1994 conference back to Yakima. In the 16 years since the last conference had been held there, a new convention center had been built that provided ample facilities for the convention itself. In addition, the magnificently restored Capitol Theater was a perfect venue for several concerts, and the Sun Dome provided a great setting for the culminating all-state concert.
WMEA has always been about the kids, but WMEA is actually about the kid because we focus our efforts on what we do for music teachers. We are a teacher professional organization. Our members are teachers. They are not the students. But teachers are about kids. So we do some student activities that benefits for our membership. We provide the All-State, the All-Northwest, the State Solo and Ensemble Contest, events like this are for kids, but they are an outgrowth of what we do for teachers. We try to provide teachers with in-service opportunities. Of course, our convention every year where they can come and hear great groups, they can come and hear great speakers, learn about teaching techniques, everything from how to fix oboe reeds to the philosophy of standard-based education and how to advocate. I think a real important role we have is advocacy. We've been down to Olympia many times to testify and to keep music education alive. We have rallied the troops a few times to get after our legislators and not let them forget about music education. We do this because we are teachers, and we do it as a teacher organization for our teachers. Who benefits from that? The kids. And so we're really about the kids, even though that's not how the good things that happen for kids are an outcome of our real efforts to make sure that the teachers have all the opportunities they need to do a good job.
It was becoming apparent that WMEA's growth was making it difficult to manage the association effectively. It was simply too much to expect volunteer board members to operate the association, plan and oversee the conference, and keep up with their full-time teaching jobs. A committee was established to look at the possibility of hiring someone to manage the day-to-day operations of WMEA. During the 1994-96 biennium, the decision was made to move forward. The board hired past president Bruce Caldwell to be its first executive manager. The board appointed Joe Caldwell to be the editor of Voice. The Caldwells established an office in their home, and WMEA was in business for the first time. During the 1996 conference in Tacoma, honor group students were housed in hotels rather than private homes because of the long-term concerns about liability, student comfort, and safety. Buses were used to move the students, and all meals were prepared and served commercially. As a result, the cost per student rose from $75 to $200. During the 1996-98 biennium, the benefits of having management immediately became apparent. Associate membership grew rapidly because business matters were being handled through a single source. VICKI White MILTUN chose to return to Yakima for the 1998 conference. The new convention center had worked well before, and the local community was eager to have WMEA back.
Before I was president, we had done two things. We were so proud of ourselves when Dave Cross was president that we had the 800 number. We thought we were really coming into the 21st century. And then we hired the first executive manager. And we kind of stepped out there on that limb, and we didn't really know if we could pay the whole salary, the whole everything. And at that point in time, we didn't know if they were going to saw the limb off behind us or whether or not we'd actually make it. So my presidency was the first presidency that had a full-time general manager. And at the end of it, Bruce Caldwell said to me that, well, you passed on about $750 more to Bruce GUTGESELL than Dave Cross gave to you. And at first I was a little bummed out. I thought, wow, that's not very good. And then I realized that we had paid Bruce his salary and that we had come out on the plus side. And so I thought that was probably a pretty good thing. I think we still have reduction in force, riffing. I think we still have school boards that look on the arts as superfluous and expendable. And I think that only good teaching and only good programs will survive. You can't defend bad teaching. And that you really, but I truly believe that parent power is the greatest power on the face of the earth. And if parents want the program, they will go and pound on the desks of the school board and the superintendents until they can keep them or get them.
1999 brought a resurrection of the Arts Time Conference after a passage of 10 years. WMEA again presented an all-state concert as the culminating event. It was decided to continue Arts Time as a biennial event which would include the WMEA all-state groups. Since moving the conference activities out of schools and into hotels and convention centers, it was obvious that longer-range planning was needed to secure convention meeting space. After touring available convention sites statewide, President Bruce GUTGESELL recommended that beginning in 2000, WMEA hold its biennial conferences in Yakima indefinitely.
The other piece, I think has been ongoing forever, just looking for every board, every president has the same ambition, is making sure that we're serving all teachers well. And one of our focuses, as has been, again, the case for many boards, is to take a look at how we were serving our general music teachers, elementary general music teachers. And from those conversations, we were so fortunate. We had Lynn Brinkmeyer on our board at the time as our general music curricular officer. And I said, Lynn, what can we do? What can we do to really serve that level of our teachers well, and talked about a lot of things, and then she just proposed this brilliant idea of an elementary honor course. And so the first one didn't occur until the biennium after us, but we laid the groundwork for our first all-state youth honor course, and that's just been again a kick to watch year after year after year, and watch that program grow and sustain itself. I think the challenges that we experienced during our time are really not unlike the challenges of today, and probably prior to me, and probably now and forevermore. And that's just that continuous advocating for our place in the general education picture. And it was a particularly hot time both at the state and the national level, but and that was a real learning curve for me, is that I didn't go into this thing expecting that the political side of advocacy would be as time-consuming, as much a focus of my time as it ultimately ended up being.
At the 2001 Arts Time Conference, the WMEA Youth Honor Course made its debut. Meeting more needs of elementary general music teachers was a major focus for President Ted Christensen. General music was the theme of the 2002 conference, and Ted was featured as general music.
Well, yeah, one of our biggest teacher training opportunities is our conference, our biennial conference. And I think it's the most comprehensive music education conference in the state. So it's where all facets of music education come under the same umbrella. And we have all different curricular areas represented. It's a huge in-service. It's 3 days. Our honor groups are connected with that. I don't know of another. I don't know of another opportunity that we would ever have to all come together as music teachers. I think it's self-perpetuating. If a teacher goes back and does a better job, the kids are going to become more excited. And if the kids are excited, the parents are going to be excited. And so when it comes time to make decisions budget-wise in a school district, if you have a dynamic music program, it's less apt to be cut or bothered. So I know that one of the significant points about our conferences are people get to connect with one another. Not only just going to the sessions and the training and things, but the fact that people get to interact with one another and talk about common problems and talk about common solutions.
In the summer of 2003, the first 3-day WMEA State Assembly took place for the board and regional presidents. WMEA enjoyed the fruits of hard work. The organization continued to flourish. One dark cloud, however, was the ever-rising cost of all-state participation, which, by WMEA's constitution, must break even financially. By 2002, the price had risen to $300 per student. Many qualified student musicians were not even auditioning because they knew they could not personally afford the fee. To help solve this unacceptable problem, Young Musicians Excelling was formed to raise assistance funds. In the 8 years of YME's existence, more than $250,000 has been raised and distributed back to assist honor group students. No student with a genuine financial need has been denied help. With existing honor group opportunities for members' elementary and high school students, WMEA began plans to develop honor groups for the middle level. WMEA Junior All-State was born in 2005, piloted as an October event for 8th graders only. By the 2009 through 10 school year, the event expanded to include both 7th and 8th graders and was included as part of the conference weekend. The continued expansion of WMEA services meant the workload on the existing 2-person office staff was obviously too much. In the fall of 2002, a secretarial position was added. The move to annual All-States made it more difficult for elected officers to be responsible for organizing the groups. In 2002, staff members were hired to manage the all-state student groups and coordinate the student housing. In order to provide students with better musical experiences, in 2004, the 3 high school all-states were reconfigured so that 900 students were divided into 7 smaller groups. That change, coupled with the advent of online auditions, brought about the hiring of a student events coordinator. In 2004, the All-State Wind Symphony was created to provide an opportunity for band students from schools with an enrollment of 750 or fewer students. A committee designed audition materials that could be prepared as a class warm-up and daily lesson. The importance of the WASL made it obvious that schools would primarily fund those subjects that were being assessed. Keeping the arts core became a major concern. In 2003, WMEA led the formation of a summit of educator organizations from the Goal 2 subject areas. As an outcome of that meeting, the Washington State Legislature adopted the Classroom-Based Performance Assessment Program. President Dave Weathered was instrumental in the development of the standards and assessments. His 2006 conference featured a number of sessions relating to assessment. Perhaps the most significant change for the WMEA had its beginnings in Dave's presidency.
The other thing that was going on during that time was we were looking at our relationship with the Northwest MENC and seeing if we could change the convention and maybe take ownership in that convention. And that was the one thing that really did change. It took, my term and the term after and maybe another term, to really get everything going like we wanted it. But from that those beginnings, we took control of the Northwest Conference and now run it for the 6-state region. Well, and it brought a lot of revenue into the state of Washington. Plus, we are the largest state, and many of the other states can't do anything like what we can do. Alaska couldn't possibly bring in the people we can bring in. And this is the only time for people spread out as far as they really are in the Northwest to really get together. And by doing it locally, we were able to save money in the long run, bring money back to those states because we have a rebate policy for them that we put in at the same time. And it's really been, there was a lot of doubters at first. There were a lot of people wondering if this is really the right way to go. But once we made all that happen, I don't think there's doubters out there anymore. They've really seen what it can do for us.
During Don CLAUSEN's presidency, from 2006 to 2008, WMEA made a concerted effort to reach out and establish relationships with other music education organizations and collegiate chapters. Collegiate membership has grown tremendously, and collegiate attendance at conferences has exploded. Don takes a look at what's coming for WMEA.
I just think that we've got a very bright future. We've got great music ed candidates out there. People coming into the field are more prepared than they've ever been. For our organization, I think we need to continue our advocacy at the state level. Certainly advocacy at the local level is also very, very important. I think the biggest challenge is that WMEA continues to foster support from its membership, and the membership also becoming involved with who WMEA is. To voice your opinions, remember that we are a service organization, and act accordingly.
Beginning in 2009, WMEA assumed management of the Northwest Division Conference. The responsibility of managing a large conference every year meant adding staff. The CALDWELL's rec room was no longer large enough to house the WMEA office. A separate space was needed. On June 20th, 2009, WMEA moved into its new location in Linwood. The 2009 WMEA-managed Northwest Division Conference in Spokane was a huge success with record attendance. Planning immediately moved forward for the 2011 Bellevue and 2013 Portland conferences. Mark Lane's 2010 Yakima conference initiated some major changes. The long-standing Friday night professional concert was replaced with area concerts for band, orchestra, and choir. Subject area banquets were combined with the conference banquet, which was moved to Saturday night and enjoyed record attendance.
It was like having two jobs at once, and so I was president from 2008 through 2010, and it was a time of a lot of change as far as the WME office goes. We rented finally our first office and moved out of the Caldwell's home, added 2 staff members, and it really started looking like a business with 5 employees and several part-time employees. And also during my term, we managed the first All-Northwest Conference, which was a huge undertaking. In the past, MENC, the national office, ran the Northwest Conference, and we contemplated for many years on taking that over, and so we did, and that was a leap of faith because we had to front a whole bunch of money, and we were either going to go broke or we were going to be successful, and it was the largest Northwest Conference in history, and it was in Spokane, Washington, so that was part of my presidency as well.
The 2011 Northwest Division Conference held in Bellevue broke all previous Northwest Division attendance records, with more than 2,100 past, present, and future music educators attending. The All-Northwest and All-State High School Honor Group concerts sold out in Seattle's beautiful Benaroya Hall. 194 members representing more than 60 years of music education in the state were honored at the Yakima conventions in 1998 and 2000, when the inaugural classes were inducted into the WMEA Hall of Fame. Up to 10 additional members have been inducted at each succeeding Yakima conference. In June 2011, the WMEA Hall of Fame Wall of Recognition was dedicated at Central Washington University. The past 2 years have seen even more changes at the state and national levels. MENC's new executive director, Michael Butera, has brought new energy and direction to the association. With Michael's encouragement, the National Association is piloting a satellite staff position in the WMEA office to provide assistance to the other 5 Northwest states. The partnership between the other 5 Northwest states, WMEA, and the National Association should strengthen our relationships as well as provide services for our smaller division member states. Tonight, we celebrate WMEA's 75 years of supporting music education. It is estimated that more than 6 million students have participated in school music programs in Washington during those 75 years. WMEA continues to serve music educators and their students and build a solid foundation for the future. President Kevin Poshton has recently founded the Advocacy Committee as an ongoing and permanent fixture of WMEA. Only through the continuing education of decision makers and patrons can WMEA ensure the stability of music education in the great state of Washington.